Hello again, and welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. So, you've heard me talk a lot about performance marketing on quite a few episodes and about social media on quite a few more. And the rules, whether it's B2B or B2C, are constantly changing. But what about the principles? Can you apply your best principles in marketing, whether it's in lead gen, social media, or your entire strategy, and apply those principles across various channels? What are the rules you live by, and how do you keep up with how much they're constantly changing? Dave Scott is the Director of Global Marketing at Twitter Business, the author of The New Rules of Lead Generation, a podcast host, and a subject matter expert on lead gen and social media. And on this episode, we'll discuss taking an integrated approach to marketing campaigns, better principles in lead generation, having authentic conversations on social channels, presidents tweeting at 3 a.m., Rihanna, Bieber, dad jokes, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a lead gen author from Twitter with a tweetable shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about you and your background and career to date.
Yeah, absolutely. I started out as a failed computer programmer with a mathematics background, and for some reason found my way into marketing. I thought that was going to be the most disastrous move
Sure.
in my life. But what I realized was that with the advent of mathematical marketing and analytical marketing and performance marketing, that my computer science background, my ability to be able to solve problems in a structured capacity, actually proved out to be a benefit. And rather than coming at the problem from sort of a brand and artist's perspective, and like the days of the old Mad Men, coming from a mathematical perspective sort of became sort of the new norm. And I found my home in, I guess, what's now called performance marketing.
So I think a lot of marketers, brands, advertisers, me included, are talking a lot more positively about I call it sort of a resurgence. I know it was never on the downtrodden, but sort of a resurgence of where we use and look at Twitter. What do you think the reasons are for that? Why we're hearing a lot more positive things in the marketing space about Twitter?
Yeah, I remember when Twitter first came on the scene, and I think the marketing community collectively rolled its eyes and said, "Gosh, not another social media
Exactly.
platform." And from a practical perspective, we all rolled our eyes and said, "Not another channel that we've got to manage and measure." But what's really beautiful about what Twitter has done is it's really made its niche in the world, and it really is unlike any other social media platform in its uniqueness. And what I mean by that is that Twitter is where conversations are happening. And you really just can't say that about any other social media platforms, right? This is kind of where I go when I want to hear the breaking news about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I'm a huge fan of, or I want to hear what's going on with my favorite artists, or I want to understand what's going on with news and politics. I have to go first to Twitter because I know that that's where the new news is happening. 10 years ago, when I first created my Twitter account, I did it for a very selfish reason. It's because JetBlue was announcing these all-you-can-eat flights
Right.
only on. Do you remember that? Only
Yeah,
on
I
Twitter?
do remember that.
So I said, "Oh God, I got to set up an account." And it was JetBlue that brought me to Twitter because that's where they chose to have the conversation with their fans. And that's what we're finding. We're finding hundreds of millions of businesses, hundreds and thousands of celebrities, and everyday people who have something to say are finding their voice on Twitter, and ultimately that's what makes it a relevant platform today.
Yeah, it's just one of the things that just amazes me with Twitter. Before I jump to the next question, one of the things that always amazed me with Twitter is I can have a conversation with anybody that way. I mean, any celebrity. You have a platform. I can, send a tweet to Rihanna, and maybe one day she'll respond. But before we even connected, before you were even at Twitter, I had read your book, The New Rules of Lead Generation, which I thought was a fantastic book about lead gen. What inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, so I told you about this sort of thing that I was a failed computer scientist and was trying to use mathematics to make sense of marketing. And what I was finding was that I was having a tremendous amount of success. So at one of the companies I was working at, I was spending about $250,000 a month generating leads. And I could reliably generate about 10,000 leads a month, which would qualify into about 4,000 deals. And the math was so undeniable about how I could actually turn $1 into 4 that I knew that I had a formula that was relatively winning. And the way we did it was we actually took sort of the anti-artist approach, and we said, let's just forget about the debate as to whether or not the call to action button should be green or blue. Let's just test it. And let's end the debate on whether or not we should be advertising on paid search or not. Let's just test it. And then sort of this test and refine methodology was born, where we started to realize that by being scientific about it, hypothesis driven, that we could actually put together a relatively strong, compelling marketing program that achieved not only generating leads, but also sufficiently building brand. And as I started to go around and talk to people about this and speak at conferences, I realized that I kept repeating
Yeah,
myself.
yeah.
So I said, well, I guess what I could do is I could either write it down or I could just record it in a video and show the video every time someone asks me a question. So I decided to take a year and write it down.
So when you look back at the book today, you talk about how the old rules did. You talked about how the old rules won't work. How have you seen the industry, if you will, for lead generation progress and change and evolve? And do we need a newer, in air quotes, rules of lead generation? That's for the next book, even since you wrote it just a few years ago.
The new lead
The new,
rules of
yeah,
lead
exactly.
generation. What's funny is when I started thinking about the book, sort of coming from I really came from a strategic background. So in addition to my failed computer science degree, I also have an MBA from Wharton, and then spent about 5 years working for a strategic consulting firm called the Boston Consulting Group. And
Mm-hmm.
and part of that process was me really helping hone my skills of thinking strategically. So
Hold on
when
just a second. I need to pick up those names off the floor. Wharton and Boston Consulting Group, real quick. Those are
yeah,
prestigious names we're throwing out today. So
did I drop enough there, or should I,
exactly.
should I drop should I drop Prince Charles and Prince Williams
Hey, there you
there,
go.
and what other names can I drop? Um, so I had a good strategic framework, and so when I created this book, I could have kind of gone two directions, right? One is I could have gone very tactical and talk about how do you set up a marketing campaign, or I could talk about the strategy behind how to build and set up a marketing campaign, how to test it, what are the perennial elements of the campaign, and how to determine whether or not your campaign is succeeding and failing. And so as I go through the book now, which is just a couple of years old, and I reread it, I'm really pleasantly surprised in how well the strategy's held up, even though the tactics have evolved, shifted, and changed. So, for example, when I first wrote this book, Pinterest really was not a player. Neither was Instagram, and now they are. But you could take these exact same principles
Agreed.
that I talk about in the social media and still apply them. That's great. Well, before I actually took this job at Twitter, which I'm now 4 months into, I actually remembered that I had written a chapter of my book on Twitter, and the strategies to use it. And I picked up my book and reread it, and I was really shocked how accurate it still was and how appropriate it still was, given what I was walking into in 2019.
Yeah, as I approach writing a book as well, to your point, I think it's so important for people to write about, or when they're reading them, think about the principles, because those are ones that you should be able to pick up and apply to any kind of social channel, at least the principle of it, not necessarily the exact tactic. And chapter 16, as I mentioned, was one of my favorite chapters. It's one that focused on sort of an integrated lead generation approach with marketing and campaigns, with that more holistic approach towards it all. As I mentioned before, this is always a concern to me because of my background, and especially in big data, and how often I still see mistakes being made with how brands represent themselves to consumers and customers. Unpack, if you will, your thoughts on what I found, at least personally, to be sort of an overarching chapter for the entire book of how we piece all of this together.
Man, if I could beat a drum to death, it would be all about integrated marketing.
Exactly.
From my perspective, I really strongly believe that this is where most businesses fail. Right. So as I outline in the book, I believe that there are 7 tried and true tactics that you can use in order to generate marketing. And my hypothesis, chapter 16, is that the more tactics you use, the better your overall performance of your marketing campaign becomes. And Kenneth, no one ever believes me.
Yeah.
No one ever believes me. Everyone wants to take their limited budget, put it in just a Facebook campaign and see how it goes, or put it in just a Google search campaign and see how it does, or blow their entire marketing campaign on a trade show booth, and then they get really disappointed when the results aren't there.
Agreed.
And the reason is because, and you know as well as I know, that it takes 7 to 27 impressions for someone to actually take action on a call to action. And they got to see it. They got to see it multiple times. And so when they walk to your booth over at the DMA show, you better hope that they've already been seeing ads. They've already been seeing case studies. They've already been finding search results. There's already been retargeting. And you hope that this is the last time they're going to see your brand and go, I need to go check these guys out. Here at Twitter, we suffer from the same problem. So we actually were taking a look at our paid performance numbers. We weren't terribly happy with them. And so we decided for a period of time to go ahead and shut it off. And guess what happened? Our organic traffic dipped.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we go, okay, gosh, this is really sad. Our organic traffic, we thought that would carry us. Let's go ahead and turn paid back on. And guess what happened? Our organic traffic spiked.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an indelible connection between everything that you do in your marketing campaign, and the more you do, the overall better the performance of your total campaign.
Could not agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just used the phrase integrated marketing, and I like that phrase because, I've said omni-channel approach. You hear so many different, the whole journey. You hear so many different ways of saying this, and then all of a sudden people get siloed into these thought leadership silos and trying to tell you the best approach at this and that, and the consumer only sees one version of you. They're not peeling apart 50 different layers. Collectively, it's all things together, but it's still, if you're going to drive lead generation or sales, you've got to know how all the pieces work together. So, and that includes social media, which, is always and constantly in the news. I feel like it's fairly evergreen too, that 5 years we'll probably be talking about what our president is tweeting at 3 a.m., whoever the president is. Facebook will continue to have privacy issues. Instagram will be toying with what they do with influencers and likes. The Russians are probably not going to be developing chemical weapons, but instead of apps that age our photos, and on and on. What's your take on social media and its future? Not necessarily Twitter, but social media in general.
Yeah, we're going to start calling you Nicodemus.
Exactly. There you go.
Prognostications.
Exactly.
That's phenomenal. I hope none of those are true.
Yeah, really.
I actually think it's so funny because I remember when e-commerce came on the scene, talking about e-commerce, and then after a while, e-commerce became so ubiquitous that said it's not just commerce. I think that's the exact same with social media, where social media is now so ingrained in everything that we do that it is not a genre. It's not a subgenre anymore. It's just conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can get your news through a news source. You get your news through Wall Street Journal. You get your news through Twitter, right? You can find out how Carl, your next door neighbor's doing by giving him a call. You can call you could meet him at a pub, or you could find out through this Facebook post. And so, I just think it's really it's this ubiquitous part of our daily lives. It's an important part of our daily lives, and I think that's where people go to have conversations. And that's what makes it really compelling for brands, right, and businesses, is because people are already there, and they're there to have conversations. They're there to learn, and so they're just highly receptive. They're highly receptive to that conversation, and the more authentic the conversation that you can have on those mediums, just the better response that you can have as well.
How do you think brands should look at engagement? I mean, obviously that shifted, and I'm not talking about with Twitter likes or retweets or anything like that. I'm talking about all social in general. I think most people are seeing a pretty dramatic drop off with the engagement they get on their content. I have my own opinion of it, but I would absolutely love to know what your opinion is. Are you seeing the same thing, and what would be, your advice to people to get better engagement?
Yeah, we're actually seeing an increase in engagement, and that is partly because of our real push towards really creating healthy conversations. And so I still think engagement is where organizations ought to be. And I think there's a strong correlation between the authenticity and the realness of your conversation and your engagement, right? So if your posts come off like ads,
Well, and the quality
then,
of
then I
content.
think, and the quality content, yeah, and all that stuff, that it's going to feel like an ad. I think you're going to get people who are going to look at it and go, "That's nice." But if it comes off as a conversation and you're really sort of thinking about that and in a really meaningful way, I think that's when it starts to get part of the public zeitgeist. And I think that's where it becomes interesting for these brands. We actually have a podcast called Character Count, and
Hmm.
I just want to plug that for a bit. But
Absolutely.
it's a bunch of case studies of Twitter customers who, and by the way, these aren't paid customers for me. They're not necessarily advertisers. They're just really interesting businesses and small businesses which have done some really interesting stuff that have been able to get a really, really good engagement. They just tell their story. So Grinder did a really great anti-bullying campaign that we profile on there, which got a tremendous amount of retweets and likes, engagement, and it sparked a conversation. And that's the kind of thing that I think social media is really good at. Grinder could have just talked about app downloads, right? That's fine. But they didn't. They actually chose to take a stand and make a perspective and have a conversation. Same thing with Monterey Aquarium. Monterey Aquarium could have pushed tickets, buy more tickets and come to the aquarium, but they really wanted to have a conversation about sea life and some of the endangered species that were out there. And that started a conversation. I think those kind of authentic conversations that start with them, that are true and authentic, true in real time, are the ones that are going to get engagement. I think those are the ones that are going to last in terms of building the
Yeah. By the way, Monterey Bay Aquarium's fantastic. So, um,
brand. Yeah, and they're funny. They're really
yeah,
funny.
they are.
If you follow them, and they have a great use of emojis and gifs and stuff like that, and you want to follow them, you want to be part of that conversation.
Well, one of the slides I use at a lot of conferences where I speak lists out all the social channels today, or list a large number of the social channels, and sort of the current volume of people in each of those channels. And I jokingly put a hashtag at the header of the slide that says something like "No more new social media channels, please." Just because it's been, from a brand standpoint especially, it becomes difficult to keep engaged with all of them. But then again, groups like TikTok emerge pretty quickly and then spike to a ridiculous volume. How
Yeah.
do you think we have too many channels, and how do you think a social channel should compete to keep up with in the midst of all that noise?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why TikTok has done extremely well is because it found an underserved niche, right?
Yeah.
There are apparently millions of junior high schoolers who really want to dance on
Oh,
this
my
one screen.
niece had to have her own channel. That was it. Yeah.
Right? And so who would have thought that?
Yeah.
And what Twitter's figured out is they're really good at is having conversations, in public conversations, right? And you can't look you can't look at TikTok, you can't look at Facebook, you can't look at anything else and say that they're as good at public conversations as we are,
Hmm.
right? And so I think being able to really find what you're really good at, really double down on that, has certainly been the success for Twitter, and I think that's got to be the success of any social media program. I actually think that there will continue to be innovation in social media as long as there's venture capital money out there. There's
Agreed.
going to
Yeah.
be a lot of people who are going to try stuff. I actually was part of a failed startup, was trying to do a social media platform based on telling jokes. So you could tell a joke, and then you could actually TikTok the joke to
Yeah.
people, and it failed miserably. But it didn't stop me from trying. Who knows if someone's going to find that, iterate on that idea, and have another fantastic program. So I love the innovation. I can't wait to see what's next, and I can't wait to see what companies like Twitter do to continue to innovate to make what they're doing even better.
What you didn't use is you didn't use the right joke. So why can't a nose be 12 inches long? Because
Because
then
it'd
it
be a
would be a
foot.
foot. Thank you. So if
Those Kenneth, those were about the right level.
exactly. Dad jokes. Yep.
They were all dad jokes.
Exactly.
Stuff like one fish. There's two fish in the tank. One fish turns the other fish and says, "Hey, do you know how to drive this thing?"
Not bad.
Yeah.
So I got you. So let's talk about lead gen and social. Then there's always a lot of debate, with agencies, with brands on how to use social. You've got your sales camp who want to use it as a sales channel, albeit filled with other content. Then you've generally got another camp of people who look at ads on social as some sort of demonic advertising. Where do you think that social is going, especially as it pertains to lead generation and sales?
Yeah, so I'm a hard nosed marketer, which cut my teeth under bosses who are always sales guys, right? And
Exactly.
so, I'd walk in on Monday mornings and they'd say, "Where are the leads?" Right?
Yeah.
So I'm jaded from that perspective. But as you take a step back and you think about the marketing funnel, I actually think that there's three funnels. There's the upper funnel, the mid funnel, and the lower funnel. And the upper funnel is really about, did I get your attention? Are you becoming aware of my brand? Mid funnel is about, are you engaging with my brand, and are you thinking of me as part of the consideration set? And then lower funnel is how can I get you to transact with me? And I think that social media really fits really more in the upper funnel and possibly the mid funnel. And I'm not exactly convinced that it is a strong performance marketing tool yet. And I get that, Facebook, performance marketers or Facebook are enjoying a $2.70 cost per click. I know that on LinkedIn, business marketing performance marketers are seeing anywhere from a $5 to $7 cost per click, but I think the jury's still out as to um, uh, whether or not that is the most effective use of funds,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not that is the right, whether or not that is the first or last attribution, and whether or not that's the thing that's really convincing them to buy. And so I think the jury's still out on that. But if you want to build awareness, if you want to carry the conversation along, you want to get them to pay attention. I think social media is great. If you want to get them to buy, and you want to put leads in seats, there are a lot of other fantastic tools that are out there that are really designed to do that, like Marketo, Eloqua, other market
Exactly.
automation
Yeah.
platforms, and tools that we know can absolutely purposefully drive leads.
How would you like to see Twitter sort of sit in that space? And I guess as part of that, really more. How do you? I'd love you to cover what Twitter for Business is doing and how you're helping that grow.
Well, I mean, I think so. We're really blessed with the fact that Twitter has a 90% brand recognition, right?
Yeah.
So people do know who we are. So awareness building campaigns, I do not need to focus on,
Exactly.
which is really really helpful. And then. And I've been at a lot of startups where you kind of had to beg customers to buy, right? So, they had no idea what the value prop is. They didn't understand it. You had to ask them to try you out for $50,000 and pray that they get an ROI. We're really blessed here at Twitter because people are already familiar with the product. We have millions of businesses which are using it organically on a regular basis. And it's a product in which you don't need to actually pay any money to actually see success as a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could be a Monterey Aquarium and have really good engagement and conversations and not spend the time. But for those that do want to spend the time, it is a really really powerful tool in order to be able to amplify that message. One of the things that's really successful for us, which is a relatively new product, is our video product. So right now we have a lot of in-stream entertainment, in-stream video, and now we can actually sell video against that mid-roll, and we can ensure that it's appropriate, it's clean, it's on brand, and it's performing really really well for us right now for the companies that want to do that sort of advertising. And so just continuing to provide services and products like that are going to be really key for us.
So I've probably heard this to be a confusing point by too many industry experts and top tier influencers. Many of them give very contradictory answers to the other, but I cannot think of a better person to ask this.
Let me break the vote.
Yeah, since you were in fact at Twitter, should someone consider Twitter as a strategy? Should someone have a Twitter strategy or a different social media strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know how, I haven't been here long enough to speak to enough customers to see how they're finding success in it. But what I will say is that it's got to be part of your overall strategy, because you got to think about Twitter sort of is not as a technology, but a place for conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a place for conversation like any other place for conversation could happen. I really, really, so just to give you an example, what we've seen is that your performance on Twitter is hindered if you come in on a Monday and you program out all your tweets over the week.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Remember how we used to do that on Hootsuite?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what happened is that it turned out to feel inauthentic to the people who follow you. Now we're encouraging as a best practice that you come in every day and you tweet when it feels right and when you have something to say. And as a result, your conversations and engagements are following. I think gone are the days where you have a Twitter strategy, and then you're like, okay, well, on Monday I'm going to talk about jeans, and then on Tuesday
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk. Rather than sort of saying, hey, let's find out what they want to talk about and what's important to us, and let's be in the moment with it. And I think that's where you're finding more authenticity. And to do that, it has to be part of your overall communication strategy, not necessarily its own strategy in itself.
So, what do you think the future is for how brands will use and interact with Twitter and social media better?
Yeah, I really think that, like you said, it's part of that integrated strategy. It's something that they do that they're on every single day. And what the beautiful part about it is everyone sort of engages with Twitter in their own authentic way,
Mm-hmm.
and it's beautiful. So, for example, we have one brand that advertises on Twitter, where instead of using the brand, the handle for the brand, they use the CEO's handle because the CEO wants to have his own conversation and
Great
dialogue
point.
with
Yeah.
his people. And you know what? That works for them. And then others want to have a social media person doing it or what have you. And so I think the trick is to find out really what works for them, follow your heart, Ken. I think is the follow your heart, and I think that's the real key here.
Well, Dave, living in San Francisco, you're not too far from the water, and like me, I read where you're an avid scuba diver. So I've got to ask, what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Yeah, I love scuba diving. I've been scuba diving for 20 years. I almost died on the Great Barrier Reef, so you know that I've got my stories. Kenneth, but I've got to say my favorite shark is probably Bruce from Finding Nemo.
Oh yeah, I've got the poster.
The newly reformed vegetarian.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought he was a fantastic twist to that whole story, and probably one of the greatest shark stories of all time.
Agreed. Well, Dave, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Yes, let's do it.
Number 1, being a sailor or being a scuba diver? I know you're an avid of both.
I do both. Yeah, I love scuba diving because for some reason, they either say that you're either going to be claustrophobic in the water or free.
Yeah.
And when I'm in the water, I feel free.
Agreed. I'm an in the water kind of gal. So number 2, Justin Bieber's Twitter feed or Rihanna's Twitter feed?
Justin Bieber. I am a closet fan of Justin Bieber. I love his authenticity. And I think he actually makes some fantastic music.
Well, I mean, we've never seen Rihanna challenge Tom Cruise to a fight either. That's what makes his more interesting. So, you're a nationally ranked board game champion. So the question is, for number 3, chess or Fortnite, the game that everybody's talking about?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't have the 13-year-old reflexes to play Fortnite. So. I'll have to go with chess. And in fact, if I could write it in my own, I think I'd write in something like Settlers of Catan, which is a very, very good game, one I play all the time, and has a little bit of fun strategy to it.
All right, number 4, the College of William and Mary or the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Two schools in your career.
Wow. So since I'm on the alumni board of the College of William and Mary, I'm going to have to say the College of William and Mary. And what I love about that program is that it's first of all, it's the oldest school in the country. Second oldest technically because we shut down for 50 years after the Civil War behind Harvard. And it's managed to both keep its tradition for 325 years, but then also sort of bring things new. I talk a lot about my computer science degree, and what I didn't really tell you is I actually don't have a bachelor's of science in computer science. I have a bachelor of arts,
Wow.
and it's
Yeah.
actually one of the very few universities that do it, because I was actually able to get a degree taking only theory classes and no actual programming classes. And the theory behind that was programming languages come and go, but the theory
Exactly.
behind writing good code is perennial. And I think that has really helped me throughout my entire
Could not agree more with that. So, number 5, and the most important question you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
career. Oh man, I guess it depends on who makes them, right? Like, you can't beat my mother's cornbread, that's for sure. She's from Louisiana, and that with a little bit of etouffee is good. But good starchy Crisco laden biscuits, you really can't beat that. From my hometown,
Oh,
there's a
funny.
there's a there's a place that I like to go to for brunch called Biscuits and Butter. And yes, please.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's the first time I've had Crisco referenced on the show. So, Dave, where can people find out more about you, buy and read the book, follow you on Twitter or some channel? Just don't say Facebook or Snapchat. But where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find my book where books are sold, Barnes and Noble and Amazon. And then you can always follow me at Scott on Marketing, or please follow Twitter Business at Twitter Business.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dave, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thanks a lot, Kenneth. It was really fun.
So there was my conversation with Dave Scott, the Director of Global Marketing at Twitter Business, the author of The New Rules of Lead Generation, a podcast host, and he's a subject matter expert in lead gen and social media. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, let's talk lead generation. I mentioned Dave's book, and in particular, my favorite chapter, which talks about a holistic approach to marketing with all the pieces connected together. Whether you call it integrated marketing or anything else, you've quite simply got to know how all of the pieces fit together. As Dave said, and I quote, "There's an indelible connection between everything that you do in your marketing campaign, and the more you do, the overall better the performance of your total campaign." I can tell you from my own experience, as someone who measured both integrated approaches and siloed ones, when it works together, it performs better for you and for your customer. And remember, tactics and tips and tools may change, but the principle should remain fairly constant. Second, so Dave makes a great reminder of how to look at Twitter, and quite simply, it's to look at it, if anything, as a channel for conversations. It's easy to zone in too closely on one channel and too broadly at all social media, but as he pointed out, for brands, engagements are where people ought to be, at least in their conversations with people on Twitter. You can create news and conversations unlike any other channel with any person or any brand. Third, so here's a question you hear people discuss frequently. Experts talk about it, contradict each other on it, pontificate on how to look at specific channels. So I went to someone at the mothership and I asked, is Twitter a strategy? My take is that no more than any other social channel, Twitter is not a strategy. If you want to show silly short videos with lip syncing and stunts, then distribute it on TikTok. If you want to put out great pictures with cool filters, then build out an audience on Snapchat. If you want to have amazing invite-only discussions with people, then form a Facebook private group. But if you want to have really engaging conversations back and forth with your audience, then have those kind of authentic conversations on Twitter. My point is that what you should focus on is the type of content and messaging. You should focus on the videos, the pictures, the private groups, the types of conversations, and so on, and not only where that content gets placed. Feed your audience with what they want to specifically talk about and what it's in the moment for them and where they are. I like when Dave reminded us that he thinks gone are the days where your strategy is to talk about one thing on Monday or another on Tuesday and so on. So find your voice on Twitter and engage in your own authentic way. People are on a channel for the way that channel is and not how you can spew brand babble, specifically with a Twitter accent. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for the privilege of your time. You can also find your favorite shark on Twitter @KennethKinney. So in the immortal words of Poet Laureate Justin Bieber, like baby, baby, baby no, like baby, baby, baby oh. So join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.